Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. With a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, he passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements and damages for his clients. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is Black Box Data, the Silent Witness in Truck Accident Investigations. Sagi, so good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Hi, Kevin.
All right, so can you explain exactly what black box data is and why it's so critical in truck accident investigations?
Yeah, the black box data is basically, it's an information recorder. So you hear about it a lot on airplanes, the black box data when an airplane goes down, but that's like what you would call the lay person term. The real term that they use is it's an ECM or an EDR. ECM would be electronic control module or an electronic data recorder. And basically what that does is record information. So you can get information, key operational metrics such as speed, brake usage, engine performance, and more. And then you also asked why it's critical. So it's critical because it gives us what you call objective evidence. So unlike you have a human testimony where a person will come in and say that, the other person looked like he was driving 35 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour, that's not really reliable. The black box is sort of impartial. It doesn't, care which side wins. It just tells you this is what was going on at the time, what the speed was, how the person was reacting, how much they pushed on the brakes, what RPMs they were at, that kind of stuff. So that's number one. Number two, it's a piece of the puzzle when you talk about reconstructing an accident. So when you reconstruct an accident, you want to know about the speed, the sudden stops, any failures, clarifying what happened. That black box fits the puzzle really well and helps us better understand what happened. And then also it helps determine fault. Like we can really pinpoint what the driver did wrong. Any mechanical issues in the car, did the airbag not deploy or did deploy? Obviously you can see it, but other factors can come in like external factors. And it really plays a part on liability, which is who's at fault for the accident.
How often does black box data come into play in the cases that you handle?
So in trucking cases, I would say in almost every trucking case we have, you'll see the black box. We get an expert and we download the black box. So it's pretty common. And I would say if you're not getting the black box data on your vehicle inspections, you're doing something wrong. And the insights we get from that data include determining the speed, the braking right before the collision. We know when the brakes were pressed based on that data, the driver's behavior. So if a driver is going into a turn and accelerating extremely hard and the RPMs hit 100, we know what, they were flooring it, whether they're shifting gears, how long they're idling for. It can tell us if a driver is fatigued, not specifically the black box data, but that is one portion of that puzzle we spoke about earlier. It can tell you if the brakes failed or if there's an engine malfunction, improper maintenance. A lot of the data you have on the black box, we'll call it the black box data, can tell you if the emergency braking system failed or if it even was operational or not. And then the last thing you can get from the black box data to help put the pieces of the puzzle together are what you call the hours of service that we spoke about in previous podcasts, where if that doesn't gel up to what the driver had put in his logs or electronic logs, then that's going to be a big problem for the trucking company. So that's kind of the insights that you get from the black box data.
We've talked in previous episodes about how you have to send letters to make sure to retain that data, right? Because they are only required to keep it for the trucking company is only required to keep it for a certain amount of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so exactly. I mean, the trucking company sometimes will get rid of the truck, data disappears. So you want to send that, what they call a spoliation letter, which is a letter that basically says, you need to preserve this evidence. And if you don't preserve this evidence, we're going to hold that against you. There's going to be a presumption that you're at fault. So do the right thing, preserve the evidence. Now, realistically, what they should do is if they're in a collision, they know there's going to be some sort of litigation or some sort of claim being made. Someone's property got damaged. potentially some human being was injured or hurt. So there's going to be a claim there. So you'd obviously want to have that recorded. You obviously want to have that saved, right? We want to be able to use that in the litigation. So that's something that we always send out in every case. And I would say everyone that if you have a trucking case, make sure you get them to preserve the black box data. In fact, you should be with your expert at the scene and getting that data at the same time.
Have you had situations where they're just like, I don't know what happened, we don't have the data? I mean, do you get that kind of response sometimes?
Used to. So I've been doing this now 25 years. That we're in the year 2025. When I first started practicing, the black box data recorder wasn't standard in every commercial motor vehicle in a truck and not in every car. So we'd have a lot of vehicles that didn't have the black box data recorder. So, but now it's pretty much standard in every vehicle. So you start seeing them from like 2015 forward. Almost every vehicle has a black box data. If it's a commercial truck, meaning some cars, older cars, or some motorcycles don't get it. I mean, we've had situations where a gas tanker blew up and burned to the crisp. So we couldn't get the data recorder. We got about a couple of seconds before. They had a different system in their truck that was able to tell us what happened a couple of seconds before the crash, but not necessarily what the black box data would have been able to tell us.
How does that the data play out in court? If a case goes to court, when you've got the black box data, how do you use that? What's the impact of it?
So the data can really help define who's responsible. Plus, it helps keep people honest. So we've had cases where the defendant, the truck drivers testifying, they were only going 45 miles an hour, but the black box, which is impartial, comes back and says 68 miles an hour. That's a big difference, especially when you're smashing into another car that doesn't have the protection that an 18-wheeler does. And so we were able to show that that driver was lying, and that case settled right away. I don't know how the defense let them testify. I guess he thought truly that that's what he had, been driving 45 miles an hour, and it really wasn't 45 miles an hour because the speed limit was 45 miles an hour. So if we didn't have that black box data, it would be the word of the truck driver versus the word of our client. So that helps in that situation. And then obviously getting it into evidence, so long as there's no chain of custody issues, it's not going to be an issue bringing it into evidence. Again, it's an impartial tool. So if you look at, for example, what is the recording? We talked about vehicle speed, brake application, steering inputs, the RPM, so the engine revolutions per minute. When you have, for example, again, someone thrusting that engine all the way down, that can really tell us what was going on. Were they braking right before the crash? How fast they were, how hard they were braking right before the crash. Was it a second? Was it 2 seconds? Was it half a second? Meaning if it was just a half a second before, clearly they weren't paying attention to what happened. So it gives us a nice picture as to what's going on, and it keeps them honest.
Are the opposing attorneys able to challenge the data? Is there any times where they've challenged it and been successful? I mean, I don't want to give you any ammo for the defense, but
yeah, we won't talk about all the stuff that I would normally say. So normally you're sending out your spoliation letter, right? And then you get your accident reconstruction expert to go out there. If you're doing it step by step and doing it right, meaning when we go out and do our inspections, I'm calling the defense attorney or the adjuster and telling them, hey, we're going out, we're doing this inspection. You can bring your expert out there. The vehicle's in the tow yard. It's being stored by one of the tow companies. We'll send them a hold letter not to touch the vehicle. And then we all go out there together, and the download is done at the same time. So they're getting their download at the same time we're getting the download. And so they can't claim there was any funny business on our part. Obviously, if they're going ahead and downloading the data without us, we would want to attack that as, if it's not helpful to us, that they're playing games with the data. Because why wouldn't they give us an opportunity if we're always giving them an opportunity? So it just depends on the data. And then sometimes, experts need special type of software to download the data because some cars require special software. So we may have to get the manufacturer out there to help us download it and so forth. But it really depends. There are ways to challenge it in terms of divulging it on a podcast here to assist the defense, hurt other plaintiffs' cases. I don't want to do that. I'm not in the business of helping defense attorneys or the defense industry or the insurance industry. So that one, unfortunately, Kevin, I won't be answering the rest of that question.
No, I'm just kidding. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I wasn't trying to trap you, I promise. How do you work with the experts, like accident reconstructionists and things like that, to analyze and interpret black box data in these cases?
So when we get the accident recon will do the download. And then once they retrieve the data, we'll have a call with them, because they'll send us the data. And it depends on which, data you're getting. Sometimes it's a little difficult to understand, but after you've done so many of them, I kind of know where to go, know what the issues are. So the expert will get on the phone with the expert, will give us an understanding of what we're seeing here with the data. Where should we be looking? We can cross-reference it with what's going on, and the expert can use it to cross-reference the skid marks, the vehicle damage, the road conditions, what the driver was saying, to see if the driver is inconsistent with what the black box is. So we put it together, and then they take that data along with the marks on the road, any other evidence that they can find, and then they put simulations together, sort of like a 3D of how the crash occurred, so we can better tell the story. So it's not just telling a story, we actually show the story. Just in case it's not if it's a rear end, you don't need to really show the story. Everyone understands what a rear end is. But if it's a complex issue on how the crash occurred, it's always nice to retell the story through an animation. And the black box data helps us really put it down accurately, along with the measurements that, traffic homicide took or our expert took at the scene.
Can you give an example of where the black box data was crucial in winning a case, and kind of let us know how it played out?
Yeah, so we had a case like I spoke about earlier where the driver testified he was going 45 miles an hour. Of course, he's going the speed limit, the truck driver. And we know...
Right on the dot, right? 45 on the dot.
On the dot, yeah. not a 1 mile an hour over.
Nope.
He's going 45 miles an hour, and we know that he was going more like 23 miles over the speed limit. It's about 68 miles an hour. We also know what we learned from the black box data is that he applied his brakes about 0.4 of a second before the crash occurred, which really suggests one thing. Normal perception reaction time is about 1.5 seconds. This guy only reacted about less than half a second before, which means he was distracted either by his phone or he was fatigued and just wasn't able to react properly. And because of that, he smashed into our client. Aside from that, we were able to prove that in that case that they violated the hours of service by violating the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. And all that together helped that case get settled, because you can imagine them coming to trial with that story, and how do they clean that up and say they were going 45 when the black box data, it doesn't lie. It tells you what it is. And so clearly they weren't telling us the truth, and that case resolved, rightfully so. And they paid the right amount of money for that case.
I know you help out a lot of other lawyers, right? With info and teaching them a bit about trucking cases and things like that. What kind of advice do you have for other personal injury attorneys, other attorneys who handle trucking cases when it comes to black box data?
So whether you're handling your first trucking case or you're handling your 50th trucking case, I would say always start with, as soon as you get that case, send out the spoliation letter. Even if the client's calling you and they're not sure, convince the client to allow you to at least send out a spoliation letter so the evidence doesn't get destroyed. And then immediately, I would say, get the defendant and defendant's insurance company, if they have a lawyer already, get them on the phone. Let them know you want to inspect that vehicle. Don't wait. This is critical evidence on that vehicle. You want to go see it right away. Those are the two big takeaways. And then have a team in place of accident reconstruction experts and human factors experts, and a team that can go and download the data. You don't want to be looking for people when you get one of these cases. You're going to get them. So if you're going to get these cases, anticipate that. Have a team ready and in place so you can go do that download right away. Don't take months to do this. This needs to be done immediately as soon as you get the case. Immediately get on it. Send that spoliation letter out. Make sure you identify in your spoliation letter what items they need to preserve. Black box would be one of them. The log entries would be another. The bills of lading would be another. And maybe we can do a podcast on the different items that we would want to request in a preservation letter to ensure that, these companies don't destroy evidence. Especially also, don't forget the personnel file. So those are some of the things that I would say immediately get that data and then have that meeting with the accident reconstruction expert so you know exactly what's going on in your case.
Yeah, it seems like if anybody were to try to pull a fast one with the black box, it's pretty transparent to know what they're doing, right? I mean, it's pretty foolish to do that.
It is, but they still do it. So they try to get away with it. Again, there's people that don't know. There's lawyers that are handling cases that just don't know or don't have the experience. And then, they get taken advantage of. And so the key is team up with someone who has some experience until you get that experience, and then you're able to do them on your own.
Yeah, good tips. All right, well, thanks for tuning in to Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. For more information or to connect with Sagi, visit shakedlaw.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Sagi, always great chatting with you. Thanks so much for being here.
Likewise, Kevin. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.